I'd like to thank you all for being here to celebrate art and justice. I'm Armory Kirk, and I'm the Director of Art for Justice. I'd like to thank Widener University's Art Gallery for hosting Art for Justice, and Rebecca Warda, where is she? Raise your hand, for her expertise in hanging and preparing the exhibit. And another shout out to Gabrielle Fairfax, where is she? Hands up here, gallery assistant. Art for Justice supports and exhibits prisoner art to stimulate public dialogue about ways to prevent crime, reduce levels of incarceration, and find humane, effective ways to improve the criminal justice system. The exhibit at Widener marks the 50th time we have shared art with the public. Art depicts our deepest truths in the human condition. The art we share in the exhibit, and I hope you all had a chance to see it, examines, explores, describes, and defines a human experience in a particular time from the perspective of extreme confinement. The process of creating this art can be a healing and transforming experience for the artist. The artwork created can leap barriers, bring people together, deepen and enhance understanding. Justice. Justice should cast a clear eye on all citizens through a legal system that is ethical and equitable. Art for Justice strives to create a platform for civic discourse about the qualities or lack of quality throughout our criminal justice system. Whether we have experienced a crime, have a family member who is incarcerated, or pay the taxes that support the system, criminal justice issues do affect us all. It is therefore in our interest that we have a system that adheres to best practices, is transparent, and accountable to us, the public who fund it. The Art for Justice artists either claim to be wrongly convicted or are guilty seeking redemption. With deep respect and reverence for life, Art for Justice acknowledges that for every prisoner on death row or serving life in prison, a murder was committed. Those lost lives are foremost in our thoughts. Our program today will share the words of some of our artists. There are many systemic flaws that permeate our criminal justice system. Wrongful conviction and the use of isolation units are two of the issues strongly addressed in this presentation. Following the spoken word, we will hear from the Honorable Ron Waters, who is the chairman of Pennsylvania's Legislative Black Caucus, William Damaschio, who is the director of the Pennsylvania Prison Society, and Natasha Williams, policy analyst for Pennsylvania House of Representatives and an Art for Justice board member. The readers for the spoken word will be Cameron Holmes, Ivan Serrano, and Jerry Givnish. Cameron is a writer, poet, singer, actor, life skills educator, and 20-year veteran of incarceration. Ivan Serrano was incarcerated for 18 years in Pennsylvania for a crime he did not commit. Jerry Givnish, founder and ex-director of the Painted Bride Art Center in Philadelphia, is the president of the board of directors for Art for Justice. Thank you, Dennis. As you can see, we've had no rehearsals. We're just old hats at this, so bear with us. I'm going to begin with reading a poem from my personal experience with violent crime. When my daughter was 2 years old, she and I were in an armed bank robbery. A stranger saved my daughter's life. This poem was written years later when she was still suffering severe night terrors directly related to the bank robbery. It's called Dreams of My Daughter. 2 a.m., Jessica screams. I run to her room. My 10-year-old daughter is sitting in bed, eyes exploded open, seeing night terrors in her head. Jessica swings her arms, kicks and trembles. Words tumble from her mouth. She cries and shakes in fear. I try to soothe her, hold her. I try to enter the dream and lead her out of the bank. The barrel of the AK-47 aimed inches from her head. 2-year-old Jessica stands in the middle of the bank, screaming, shaking, her red face, red hair in a panic dance. "Shut up that motherfucking kid, shut her up," yells a huge stocking-faced man, a man with pistol hands. On the bank floor, my eyes move from my daughter to the AK-47, to the man gripping the weapon, to the customer from the corner, inching on his belly slowly toward them. There are mimes in the dream. Jessica is terrified of mimes that remind her of the stocking-faced men, the guns, the monster yells to shut her up. Jessica finally lets me into the dream. We come out of the bank together. I rock her to sleep and see the rescue man reach her, pull her under his body, crawl backwards into the corner, and save our lives.
Thank you, Ann. I am Charles Lawson, co-founder of Art for Justice. It's hard for me to express verbally what I think about injustice, so I turn to ways that will not find me stumbling or stammering. I paint. In this exhibit, you see my art, which expresses my thoughts, emotions, and pain. After years of inner battles and hopeless attempts to seek legal remedies to the injustice I felt laid on me by society, I found myself searching for some form of happiness and a way to maintain my sanity. In the course of my searching, I unearthed a hidden talent. I discovered that my art can be moving and inspirational to those in despair, as well as to those who can appreciate beauty and the visual arts. I am sentenced to life without parole. Yet I have challenged myself to change my life for the better. I wanted to leave my mark, to speak for others who share my fate, and send a message to those who see my fate as just. I have two major goals in exhibiting my artwork. The first is to give something back to my community. Growing up in Philadelphia, I knew the poverty and violence that young people live with every day. Peer pressure was a constant reality, and survival was dependent on how you were perceived. I want my art to inspire youth to look to their own talents and turn away from violence, which can lead to the halls of the criminal justice system and eventually to prison. If I can inspire just one or two persons, then I can count myself among those who have tried and succeeded. My second goal is my hope that in viewing my artwork, you will recognize that even in prison, there are individuals who have worth and have something to contribute to their communities. I believe redemption is possible, even for those who are long-term offenders.
I'm Eddie Ramirez. While most people spend their 20s discovering themselves and settling on plans for their future, I have been in prison battling to overcome a wrongful conviction. Throughout this entire ordeal, I have maintained my innocence and conducted myself with dignity and patience while the slow wheels of injustice turn. I am now in my mid-30s. As a poet and artist, I draw on my memories of the past, point of view in the present, and dreams for the future. It is a constant communication with time and space, interpreted in a language which can be described as the cow in the cows. This is my poem. Write down these walls in ink or paint or blood. leaves scratched into from chipped fingernails. The legacy of learned hurt and preserved dignity. Write down these walls, leaving a stamp in all caps that reads, I will breathe. Write down these walls on the western side so that dawn's first light can shine down on more than the truth. Set ablaze the text that burns in the masculine sight. Let Capo Jock, punk or predator, have their space, say their piece. Write down these walls until the very weight of what's been ignored causes collapse. Take rubble and dust to fashion monuments like they did on 9/11, and wait to see who pays homage to a continuing American tragedy. Write down these walls because walls don't forget.
I am Daniel Gwen. When I was invited to write something for this exhibit, I didn't know where to begin. I'm on death row for a crime I did not commit. I've been sitting here for 16 years. I'm trapped in a box where the days just tick away, where the walls are closing in like a trash compactor, crushing all hopes, dreams, and life. Before my wrongful conviction, my addiction to drugs was wasting my life. I was part of the madness of the streets, abusing drugs and committing crimes to pay for the drugs. I developed such a bad reputation for myself that I was getting blamed for just about everything that happened in the hood. I couldn't see the beauty of life and in life because there was so much pain and anger blinding me. My transformation came about after I was forced to sit still and take a look, a real hard look at myself. Meditation and deep contemplation helped me gain insight into my troubled life and also combat the ills of solitary confinement. After I worked through the garbage in my head, I finally woke up. I'm a self-taught artist. The real challenge of it all is being colorblind and color illiterate. There are some colors I can't see or identify. I strive to paint from what God inspires, to paint from my soul. I don't think I could ever make up for all the damage I've caused, but doing whatever I can to help make this world a better place is a good start. How can I help someone else when I can barely help myself? I found the answer to be selflessness. I share my life experiences as a cautionary tale in hopes of inspiring others. It doesn't matter what the next man is doing. It's all about what you're doing and not giving up hope.
I am George Ivan Lopez. I was born in Puerto Rico, one of 13 children, raised by a single parent. And throughout my childhood, it was very hard. My mother gave us the best she could, a better mother I couldn't ask for. Since the very first moment I had claimed my innocence, which I am, and I will continue to claim my innocence until someday that the Lord will give me that opportunity. I stand firm that the truth will prevail. This long imprisonment has cost me my wife and children, everything I worked so hard for, and most of all, my freedom this year is in heaven. Life on death row is like having a fatal disease where you know you have it. You know it's probably going to end your life, but you just don't know when. Now, at that, 100 times. Not that you are an innocent man and could very easily lose your life for a crime that someone else committed. Still, you are facing execution. Without art, my life in this man-made hell will be just that, hell. Art can take my mind away from the dreadful place and give me that sense of freedom, which I lost so many, many years ago. I can honestly say, art has kept me alive.
I'm not letting him go because George Lopez, who's over 50 and has had a stroke and is on death row, spent 6 months of the past year in the hole. I've taken, with his permission, some of his letters and a poem he wrote to put these words together.
George writes, never in my life have I fought so hard, so deep for my sanity. I'm in the hole for 180 days. Because I did legal work for the inmates, I had 20 days to go. I'm in a cell between the cells of two broken, crazy men who bang their shower shoes against the stainless steel sinks night and day, day and night. They bang and bang and bang. Through the banging, I hear crying. The banging, the crying are driving me crazy. These local men play with their own feces. Urine leaks out of their doors. One man throws his feces at other inmates, at guards who laugh. My will fights to survive this pain, this sorrow. I plead with the tears that flood my ruptured heart, not drown my dreams. To survive, I need to believe in something. I need to be ready when someday someone else locked in darkness, locked in pain and sorrow, inserts a precious key deep into the crevice of my broken heart and sets us free.
Imagine being in a place that from the time you wake up in the morning until the second you fall asleep at night, constant reminders show you how worthless you are and how meaningless your life has been. You are still alive as ever, yet the outside world sees you as a non-person who's without a voice, without the right to feel, to love, to even dream of the future. Now, imagine it is for a crime that you didn't commit. Could I do it for 20 years? For me, that's what life in Pennsylvania has meant so far. Painting allows me to search inward and share with others. Painting vividly portrays beauty and emotional content, provokes thought, dialogue, and allows sharing of life without requiring physical proximity to the one you are sharing. For the innocent, that is part of our salvation and our sanity.
I am Luis Gonzalez Suave. I am Suave. I am a lifer. I came to prison at the age of 16. Prison is an attempt to get into our brain and muscle. It's a crazy mixture of boredom and terror, the worst kind. Boredom because nothing happens. Terror because anything could happen anytime. In prison, they don't just strip you of your clothes. They go deeper than that. They take any dignity you may have. When they dress you up again, you won't be able to separate yourself from the others. You can't have anything that connects you with your inner self. Nothing that says, this is me, I'm different from the rest. Yes, we are like a herd of animals. Art doesn't use words to give easy answers. Art challenges us to study the hard questions. How would you feel if society labeled you a mistake, like me? What would you go on with your normal life? Think of your brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, mothers, cousins and fathers who are rotting in these concrete steel tombs. Who does this process help? You? The community? The family? Who?
In 1998, while I was director of the Painted Bride Art Center in Philadelphia, I traveled with fellow artist Willie Ye to Graterford Prison every Friday to conduct an art workshop. We were invited by Lifers Inc. to offer art making to a small group of men who were incarcerated for life. In Pennsylvania, a life sentence means that you die in jail. There is no parole. We provided the students with a respite from prison monotony and used their paintings to make the men visible to the outside world through art shows in Philadelphia. The weekly sessions were exhilarating but exhausting. Such was the intensity of our interaction with the men, it confirmed our belief that the workshops were an important thing to do. While I was conducting these art workshops, I met Angel Ortiz. My impression was that he was not a violent, but a disciplined, thoughtful person. Angel has been serving a life sentence since 1991, when he and 3 other Latino males were found guilty of robbery and murder. Part of the evidence against Angel is a confession that he did not make. According to Angel, the police had him sign a blank paper over which they typed the confession. That Angel was wrongly convicted compels me to assist him in getting out of jail.
My name is Rene Angel Ortiz, 21 years, 9 months, 11 days and 11 hours ago. I was wrongly apprehended, accused of robbery and murder of Harry Crumps. It was 27 days before my 19th birthday. The prosecutor says that while the victims were being robbed, I was at the top of the car shaking it. The fingerprints and palm prints extracted from the roof of the victim's car did not match mine. There was a witness who could not identify me in a lineup. I am innocent. Why do I share this with you? Because the flaws and mistakes that occur in the criminal justice system destroys lives. Humans make mistakes. I am a mistake committed by a criminal justice system that claims to uphold justice. I am an abstraction in this system. To everyone except my friends and family. My paintings shares my experiences by using layers of paint, collage, lines, and figures. These images are abstracts, lacking a human presence. When we lose compassion, life becomes abstract, surrounded by walls of indifference. I am innocent of this crime, but finding a human being with compassion to help me restore my life is difficult in this abstract world.
After I left Graterford, Angel wrote me about his efforts to get out of prison. Acting as his own lawyer, he was appealing his conviction and asked for my help. The following is from a letter expressing his frustration with the courts.
You know, I still have not received my time-stamped copy of the subpoena you mailed out for me. Yo, those people do what they want when they want. It's the reality of the picture. Is it right? No. In the position I'm in, I'm totally powerless, vulnerable. It totally makes me feel hopeless. How do I do it? It's because I'm innocent. That's what reminds me to keep going. Even when everything else fails and no one, not all, believes in me. And even those who do don't extend any help. I got to keep moving. Strange life, I despise it. I totally disagree with it. I'm fighting for it. Smile. Someone needs to smile. I'm in the law library. I'm tired. In today's paper, a friend of mine named Brinson, a lifer, is going home in 10 days. Won his case, was incarcerated since 1986. He received valuable support. I'm happy for him. Now, it's my turn.
Fortify I by Christopher Armory. Do you know what it feels like to cry, to die, to tearfully utter goodbye? Stand by and watch an innocent man get crucified. Do you know what it feels like to be mortified, petrified, to be falsified? Stand by and watch an innocent man get crucified. Do you know what it feels like to feed in a pigsty, be a small fry without an alibi? Stand by and watch an innocent man get crucified. Do you know what it feels like to be damnified, defied, horrified? Stand by and watch an innocent man get crucified? Do you really wish to dry the tears in an innocent man's eyes? Mollify? Dignify? Start to fortify I. I am Charles Lawson. I will never give up the hope that one day our country will move beyond the inequities and injustices that floor our national experiment of mass incarceration. Denying individuals the opportunity to address injustice is not the mark of a civilized society. It is a form of vengeance. If you see value in my artwork, then I truly hope you come away with a determination to address the injustices that saturate the criminal justice system, so that a person like me, like so many others, could be put to a constructive use. I leave you with these poems. Light, darkness, no way out. The sky is blue. The forest is gray. My life is dark. Strong limbs, canopy above. No sun shines through. I plant a seed. 4 more spring up. I have a field. We sit and talk. 3 hours to go, alone again. Looking at the wall, the sky opens up. Home at last.
That's our spoken word. Let's give some applause for the men who wrote those words, please. Let's give a special thank you to Ivan. This is his first reading. I thought he did a great job. And my man Cameron, in my next life, I'm getting that voice. All right, we're going to move on. We're going to sit down, and I'd like, am I introducing William Damascio? I'm introducing William Damascio, who is the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Prison Society, who will speak very briefly because everyone's in a hurry and has to go somewhere.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Well, I've been with the Prison Society for about 14 years, and I wish I could come here and tell you that we've been a lot more successful than we have been. We've had some successes, surely, but as you probably know, we live in a very punitive society. 5% of the world's population live in this country, but we incarcerate 25% of the prisoners in the world. That's a heck of a record. Prison Society was established in 1787 with a mission of promoting just, humane, and restorative corrections. And I wish I could be more eloquent, but I think we've heard all the eloquence from the men who are living in these conditions. We do a variety of things to try and ease the pain of people who are in prison, as well as work with family members and former prisoners. We run a number of programs from our office in Philadelphia, programs designed to assist with their reentry, programs designed to keep families together. Anything we can do to help foster the bonds in the family are going to be helpful in terms of promoting more successful reentry efforts. We teach parenting classes in the prisons, and we work with children of incarcerated parents in an after-school program that we call SKIP. It's amazing. Some of these kids are there, they have a mother or a father, and in some cases, a mother and a father, both, in prison throughout the state. We also engage in advocacy legislatively and locally. And I think we had one compelling victory last year, and that was we worked in coalition to get a ban, a prohibition on the shackling of pregnant women during childbirth. I wish I was making that up. I mean, it's hard to believe that in this day and age, we still do that. And the fact of the matter is, Pennsylvania was only the 10th state to enact such a ban. 40 other states still do this. This is barbarity. Of all the things that we do, and I've been told I've got, what, 3 minutes? 3 minutes left? No. Of all the things the Prison Society does, I think the big program that goes back to the very earliest days had to do with prison visitation. There was a group, Ben Franklin, Ben Rush, people who signed the Declaration of Independence, who came together in colonial times and who had the heart, and these were not all Quakers, a number of them were, but they were a mixed bag religiously. And they came together and had a very strong feeling about the humanitarianism of the day. And they wanted to bring that to people who were in our prisons. We didn't have penitentiaries in those days. We had dungeons. Men, women, children, they all went in the same place. So early members of the Prison Society brought hot soup in to feed them, advocated with the General Assembly to get blankets for them and clothing, and through the years eventually got separate facilities for the kids and for the women. In 1829, the General Assembly said that under the Act of the Official Visitation of Prisons Act, that the Prison Society was able to designate official visitors who could go into any state or county prison. We have 63 counties with prisons in Pennsylvania, and we have 27 state prisons. We could go call on any inmate in any one of those facilities 7 days a week, between 9 and 5. Knock on the door, I want to go see whomever. And we had to be admitted. I thought it was a tremendous act of foresight on the part of the legislature at that time that they recognized the importance of maintaining those contacts. You know, those big walls keep people inside, they also keep people out. And it's really important for the people inside to have that kind of connection with the outside world. We have about 250 volunteers across the state who go into our prisons on a daily basis. And we're always looking for new recruits, so if anybody has an interest in doing this kind of work, please give us a call at the Prison Society. I think I better quit while I'm ahead. Thank you all very much. This is a wonderful program, and I think Art for Justice deserves a big hand. Thank you. And for the first time, I'm going to be followed by Representative Waters.
I want to strongly applaud the work of the Prison Society, and yet it's not enough, all right? It's not enough. So thank you, Bill. I'd like to introduce a gentleman here who has done so much for people across this state, and not for the people with a lot of money and big corporations. I've seen this man at Graterford. and I have a huge respect for him. Please welcome Rep. Ron Waters.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne Marie Curry. She saw me graded for it. I was visiting too, okay? I want y'all to know that. But I will be there tomorrow morning as I go up there to see so many of people who have become good friends of mine now, who I met while visiting other inmates. I met people who are there who call me on the phone and to let me know what it's like to keep that contact. And I guess some people might say, well, you're a legislator or you are a lawmaker. And what is your interest with the people who are incarcerated? Well, I'm also someone who believes that the first priority of government is public safety. And with 90-something% of the people incarcerated will be released one day, we better make sure that the people who are going to be released are going to be coming out better prepared to be law-abiding citizens. Otherwise, if they are going through all kind of unnecessary drama while they are incarcerated and mistreated and treated like animals, and when I hear people tell me about how they are being treated at some of these facilities across the state, it's very disturbing. And when you look at the high recidivism rate that we have in this state, that means that a person could be in jail for 10 years, like Mr. Giddens was a few years ago when those cops were being killed in Philly. About 5 cops were being killed in a short period of time. He was in jail for 10 years. In less than 2 months on the street, he gets into a shootout with a cop, and the cop is dead. I ask, we as the taxpayers pay roughly $33,000 a year to incarcerate inmates throughout this state. And he's no exception. So $33,000 of your hard-earned money went to incarcerate Mr. Giddens. Now, if he came out 27 years old and went to jail when he was 17, I feel bad for the police officer and his family. But I asked the question, what did you do with that man while he was in your possession for 10 years that he would come out no better than he was when he went inside? Maybe even worse than he was when he went inside. If you had a hospital, don't forget this place is called the Department of Corrections, okay? All right. With that recidivism rate and the way that people are coming out of there, I say change the name from Department of Corrections. You got a low score on the amount of people you are correcting or rehabilitating. Call it something else. If you had a hospital that people was going inside the hospital and was staying for a long period of time, and you, the taxpayers, were paying for their stay in the hospital, and they had some kind of problem that was a public safety problem. They had something that would make it a public safety issue that they needed to be removed and kept away from society. And if they came out the hospital after being there for a long period of time and still had the same problem, still had the same ailment that was contagious and dangerous to society, how long should that hospital stay open? With 40% of people coming out still as bad as where they went inside. In some cases, even higher. Something is wrong with the way that we are housing and treating people who are incarcerated. We have to invest more on a cure rather than on punishment. Because if we keep spending money on punishment, then we are no better than people who they criticize, like Michael Vick, for being in the dogfighting ring. These are human beings. And just because they made a mistake, and let's not get funny about people make mistakes. I'm sure some of us made mistakes in our life. I know nobody here perfect, okay, so. And I tell people all the time, some of them lawmakers too in Harrisburg, who write these crazy laws to increase punishments and sentences and take away funding for rehabilitation. Don't get brand new. I don't know about your past, but some people ain't in jail because they just ran faster than somebody else did. okay? You got away. Maybe you was better at being a criminal. So let's get real about this. If we're really true about public safety, and that's what I place my priority on, public safety here, and we are going to be cost efficient, and we as state legislators are stewards of taxpayers' dollars, and we keep building more and more prisons, do we think we could build our way out of this? Are the streets any safer? We went from 5,100 inmates in 1980 to 52,000 now. And they're building 3 more prisons. And they wanted to build 4. Actually, they wanted to build 8. Y'all don't know that. They wanted to build 8 prisons, more prisons, state prisons. $200 million a piece they cost to build, and about $60 million each to run every year. Okay? The cost of prisons, what we're spending in prisons, is rising 6 times faster than what we're spending on higher education. Where are our priorities? If we went from 5,100 to 52,000, we should have caught all the bad guys by now. But they building 8 more. What's the plan? So I say, we, the taxpayers, you, the citizens of this Commonwealth, who some legislators are afraid that they don't want to be perceived as being soft on crime, that let's let them know, let's get smart about this. Let's be effective. Charge them to make the streets safer. Charge us to reduce crime. Charge us to make better citizens and prepare better citizens to compete in the global economy instead of then leading the nation. Pennsylvania leads the nation in locking up its citizens. And America leads the world in locking up its citizens. So where do we sit in that picture, Pennsylvanians? Let's charge the legislators with a new assignment. Let's do a better job with our citizens. Let's raise more law-abiding people. Let's raise better neighbors. Let's send our children on the path of hope and success. Let's stop looking at 3rd grade test scores to figure out how many prison cells we need to build down the road. That should be the indication of how many resources we need to rescue those children right away, to help those children. That's the smart way. That's the humane way. Let's tell the lawmakers. Stop running around talking about, oh, the person used to get 5 to 10, but now, thanks to me, they're going to get 10 to 20. Well, what you going to do with them those 10 to 20 years? And by the way, who's paying for that? We are. Don't tell me how much you want to take out of my pocket. Tell me how much you're going to make my community a better place to live. If you can't tell me that, then put that legislation away until you can come back with something that works for all of us. That's why I do what I do. And I can tell you firsthand before I take my seat, Armory Kirk. And thank you, Armory Kirk, for inviting me. Real quickly, when I was 14, I was a paper boy for the Philadelphia Inquirer. And I was out I was collecting my money on my paper route on a Friday evening. And I was at 60th and Locust collecting my money. I was going up in this apartment building that's since then been torn down. And I was walking up there, I saw this guy leaning on the car. You know, I'm 14, just turned 14, so I guess I'm a little naive. So I go walking up the steps to collect my money, and I get grabbed from behind. And I get thrown down, and a knife put in my throat. Not in it, I mean up to it, okay, up to it. And I was scared. This was a grown man. He marches me down to Sayre. There's a schoolyard down the street at 59th and Lopez. He marches me down there with a knife in my hip, told me I better not scream or I'm dying. So I cooperated. He gave me a schoolyard. He asked me to take all my money. If I leave a penny in my pocket, you're going to kill me. So I go right to searching, making sure I don't have a penny. That's the last thing I remember. I woke up 2 weeks later in used to be called Misericordia Hospital with from a fractured skull, broken jaw, eye almost cut out of my head, ear hanging by a thread, right? 14 years old. Fortunately for me, somebody walked through the schoolyard and saw me laying in there. And he ran down the street to this store called Schaefer's, used to be a hoagie shop down the street. He runs down there and tells them, we need to get the cops. There's a young guy laying in the schoolyard. Look like he's dead. So they go get the cops, and they bring the cops up, and they take me to the hospital. Fortunately, they saved my life. But the guy who reported the crime was a teenager himself, and he was arrested for the crime. And not only did they arrest him, they arrested his friends who wasn't even with him. This was in '64. So they arrested, it was a gang down there called the Barbie Coast. They wanted to lock them up anyway, right? So they go arrest them all. I go to court, I go before the judge, and he tells me to identify the ones who did it. And I look at them all up and down, said, none of those guys. And he says, look again. I look, I said, Your Honor, it's none of these guys. I know the person who did it was a grown man. It's none of these men that didn't do it. He said, you know what? You probably don't remember. You had a fractured skull. You was hospitalized. You don't remember. And he convicted every single one of them and put them all in jail. That's how come I understand what's going on with this system. I understand. And guess what? The man who got arrested, his name was Warren Stewart, came to me 5 years ago and asked me, you're a legislator now. Ryan, can I talk to you? I need a letter for a pardon. I've been out here, I've been dealing with this. I'm a deacon in my church. I got a family, I got grandkids. I would love to be able to have a pardon, just to get that stigma off of me. I wrote a letter to the governor, and he got a pardon. Poetic justice. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. Some good people. There's a lot of good people. I mean, there's a lot of hard times, but there's a lot of hope, and there's a lot of goodness out there, and there goes goodness. So I want to introduce now, and we're just about done here. We're coming up to a really fine closure. I want to introduce Latasha Williams, who is a board member, and she is also the head of our Criminal Justice Committee for Art for Justice. She's going to speak briefly, and then we have an award to give.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here. What a wonderful evening. It's nice to see all of you here for such a wonderful cause. Art for Justice is honored to present a painting to Widener University School of Law professor, Mr. Leonard Sosnov, in recognition of his work that has freed innocent people who were sentenced to life in prison or long-term confinement. In his 21 years as a criminal law professor at Widener's Delaware campus, Professor Sosnov's work with Centurion Ministries has brought about the release of 4 prisoners who had long maintained their innocence. This year, after 15 years of litigation, he and co-counsel secured the release from Graterford Prison of a man held for more than 45 years. In 2 other cases, after 10 years of court battles, prisoners held more than 2 decades gained their freedom after new trials were granted. In the 4th case, Professor Sosnov found long-forgotten physical evidence in a 13-year-old rape case and arranged for DNA testing. That is, the victim was 13 years old. Is that correct? I'm sorry, the case was 13 years old. Forgive me. Test results showed that semen on the evidence did not belong to the defendant, who was ultimately freed from prison. The painting that Art for Justice is presenting to Professor Sosnov is titled The Wall.
And I'd like to say just a few words about this painting, because this painting was painted by Gwen, who is on death row in Pennsylvania, and he claims actual innocence. Daniel painted this from his heart, and it shows a lawyer reaching over a wall to a person who is reaching up for help. And I did a presentation at Penn Law School last year, and this was the painting that the lawyers came around and looked at. And I overheard one lawyer showing one of his students, and he said, "This is why I do what I do." So I am very, very honored to give this painting to Len Sosnoff, and I'd like you to join in applauding his work and then ask him to say a few words.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I really appreciate getting this award from an organization that is trying to do so much to help inmates. Also trying to help youth who are at risk to keep them out of the criminal system. By the way, I call it the criminal system, not the criminal justice system, because justice is only a sometime thing. There's a lot of injustice in the criminal system. And for my few minutes here, I want to talk, first of all, give a plug for Centurion Ministries. We're looking for those of you who know about Centurion Ministries. First of all, it's not a religious organization, so if you're looking for a good organization, but you're not a religious person, despite the name, it's an organization that has been around now for over 25 years, whose sole mission is to try to free people in prison who are completely factually innocent. Not legally, technically innocent, completely factually innocent. Had nothing to do with the commission of the crime. They also select people who they believe have the fortitude, despite all the years in prison, to make it as a citizen on the outside. And it's a wonderful organization. It's the only organization that tries to free innocent people all around the United States and Canada. And very few of their cases are DNA cases, which means that most of their cases, and most cases in the system, don't involve DNA. It's nice if you know there's DNA from the person who did it, and then your guy has different DNA, bingo. Most cases aren't like that. DNA is not involved in most cases. So they do the tough cases, and it requires a lot of investigation, years of work to grind it out, which takes a lot of money. So if you're at all interested, Centurion Ministries, you can just Google it. You get a nice, spiffy website right now. So in a few minutes, I want to talk about just about problems of how convicted people end up being convicted who are innocent. What goes wrong in the system? I figured you're a good audience for me to rant for a few minutes. I can't do this most places. Right at the end, I mean, some things are unavoidable. And it's amazing that some people still think, I don't believe innocent people get convicted. You have fair jury trials, you have appeals, you have everything else. Some things are unavoidable. There aren't videotapes of crimes when they occur. That is a really rare occurrence. So when you go to court, you're always depending on the accuracy and the truthfulness of the people who come to court, and you've got then a judge or jurors who are trying to figure it out. Are these people accurate? Are they truthful? And there are always people getting found not guilty who are guilty, and there are people who are being found guilty who are innocent, because we don't have a perfect system. There's no way to make it perfect. It really isn't. So that's the unavoidable part. The avoidable part, though, is talk just in general terms about the cases that I've had and the kind of cases that are in the system, why innocent people get convicted. First of all, one of the main problems is when somebody gets arrested, when police first focus on somebody, tunnel vision. What happens is when you've got a suspect, when you arrest somebody, in many places, all the resources get tunneled into getting the evidence to get the conviction. The investigation stops. The only investigation is to keep trying to get the evidence, to get the conviction. So then, when you get information that doesn't jive with the person who decided is the doer, the person who did it, it's shuffled aside, it's not investigated. So right there in the beginning, investigators, detectives, prosecutors sometimes with tunnel vision. The next place where we have problems in the system, unlike some countries in the world, this surprises my students because I teach this to my students. In our country, you can be convicted on the testimony of one witness. One witness. You don't need any physical corroboration. You don't need any witnesses to corroborate. For example, the most prevalent cause of innocent people being convicted is mistaken identification. It's the hardest kind of case if you're a defense lawyer, because here you have, and of course for the person, defense lawyers don't go to jail. It's hard on defense lawyers, but there's limits. You have a sincere person who's been a victim of a horrible crime. It cries out for punishment. It cries out, somebody should pay for that. The person who did that should pay for it. Well, when you're in the courtroom and you've got the trial, there's only one possible person who can pay for it. That's the person who's sitting in the defendant's seat. And you have a witness who takes a stand and says, I'm positive, and sincerely believes, 100% believes, not a mean-spirited person, a person who's going through an awful traumatic experience. It's the toughest kind of case. And in the end, it's hard to convince juries. We're concerned here with accuracy. We've got to look at this objectively with accuracy. Is this reliable enough to say beyond a reasonable doubt that somebody's guilty? So that's one kind of case. And I'm talking about the factors I'm talking about, the few cases where I've been successful, the ones where I haven't been successful. These are all the kinds of elements that are involved. The other thing is you can be convicted on just one witness who is a prison inmate who is getting a hell of a lot in return for the testimony. Somebody who's got a terrible record for all kinds of convictions. In other words, if you're going to meet this person on the street, you wouldn't believe that person if they started giving you advice about anything. It's an unreliable person. People get convicted though on the basis that the person says, I was involved in that homicide, but I was really involved in a very minor way. And prosecution has given that person a deal. It's a first-degree murder case. It should be life in prison. The prosecutor's giving that person a deal where they'll serve 3 to 6 years in prison. The admitted participant should get life in prison. So there's an incredible motivation to lie, to say what would please the prosecutor, and sometimes to protect who really was involved. Not to name my best friend who went along with me. I'll name some schluck from the neighborhood. This guy from the neighborhood. This is all real cases, kind of thing that happens. There's also the problem in cases that are really weak. I told my class today about a case that was incredibly weak evidence. They said, how can a jury convict? Well, one of the things is we've been adversary systems. You've got a lawyer on one side, you've got a lawyer on the other side, and sometimes it's not a very even match. One person is a heck of a lot more persuasive and better presenting the issues. And it may be ineffective assistance of counsel, it may not, but you've got somebody who's persuasive. So even though it's very weak evidence, with an adversary who's weak on the other side, you get people who are convicted. And then unfortunately, there are cases where police and prosecutors don't disclose evidence that's exculpatory. It could show that somebody was innocent. And their duty, constitutionally under due process clauses, you have to disclose that evidence. But if you're on the other side, you're the defendant, you're the defense lawyer, you're never going to know about that evidence unless they actually disclose it. Because they're the ones that got it in the file. You don't have a right to just take their file and go through it and pick out, what you think is something to your case. And that's another pervasive problem. And when you go on appeal, I get these cases, the cases I'm dealing with are people who have already been convicted. cases where, by the way, some of these cases, when you look at them, the case gets referred to me, and some of them really have a strong odor coming from them. What I mean by that is that anybody, if I would tell you to start telling me the facts of this one case I have right now, you'd start shaking your head. How did they decide to prosecute that guy in the first place, let alone get a conviction? And there's a failure sometimes for prosecutors to use their discretion, even though it's possible they may get a conviction, to use their discretion not to prosecute the case. Because any reasonable person would suspect, even though I may be able to get a conviction, that this person may very well be innocent. There's too many questions involving the case. And the problem is, when you get into it like I do, later in the case, after somebody has been convicted, multiple problems. One problem, just right off the bat, is if you're getting in a case where there's already been a conviction, an appeal, is the attitude of a lot of prosecutors, and unfortunately the attitude of some judges, why are you here bothering with this case? You had your fair trial, the jury spoke, you had your fair appeal, and you lost. Game over. It's not a game, but the view, there's a lack of open-mindedness. Unfortunately, with some judges, to quote a prosecutor at a case, one of these four that I ended up winning eventually, who I went to, and I said, look, this case really smells. You got convicted, but look, here's the evidence that shows there's a real good chance you got the wrong guy here, you didn't do it. He said to me, Len, remember, you have to respect the sanctity of the verdict. The sanctity of the verdict. I thought I was in church. It's not sanctity. It's a good chance it's right. It may be wrong. And that's what we have to do. We have to open up the hearts and minds of people involved in this, not to have so much resistance. As far as a practical matter, one of the biggest bars right now to freeing the innocent, some of you may know this, is in Pennsylvania. Even if you come up with brand new evidence, let's say an inmate is lucky enough to have a persistent, with no money, is lucky enough to have a persistent family who is out there on the streets trying to get new evidence, and finally comes up with some witness before nobody was able to find an important new witness to show innocence. Well, at that point, remember, it's a family, somebody's been laying in prison for a while, doesn't have a lawyer, doesn't have money, and by the time they scrape the money together to get a lawyer or to talk to other inmates and figure out what I should do, in Pennsylvania, you've got 60 days from the time you learn about anything new or could have learned about it to file in court. If you don't file in 60 days, it doesn't matter how compelling it is, as far as you being innocent, you're done. That's really unfair. That's from our legislature. We're hopeful right now at least we're getting a change potentially. There's a bill pending to 1 year. So it's not going to cure all the evils of the system, but at least some people now won't get time barred after just 60 days. So I leave you with this. It's just, we have about 85,000 people here incarcerated just in Pennsylvania. If, this is, I think it's more than this, but even looking at some government statistics, even if only 1% of those people are innocent, we've got 850 innocent people sitting in jail. 850 in Pennsylvania alone. So we have to keep on fighting, and I accept this award not only for myself, but on behalf of everybody, lawyers and non-lawyers, who fight to free the imprisoned innocent. Thank you.
I'd like to thank you all for your patience. You have been a beautiful audience. And that phone call was from prison. That phone call that I just went to get, and it was from somebody who has spent most of his adult life in prison for a wrongful conviction. So I appreciate your patience, and I know there's a lot of people here who have experienced these matters that we have spoken of. My respect to you, and art and justice. Thank you.